Hi, I'm Steven, and I make cardboard costumes and props. Today I'm making Prowler's Air Jordan sneakers out of cardboard. That's right, I finally made these shoes. Let's get started. I have a hunch some of you guys are going to be making these sneakers. So before you begin, figure out the size of your foot, then go up one size. The sneakers that I made should fit between size 9.5 and 11. This is US sizes. Cardboard lacks the flexibility of fabric and leather, so definitely make yours a little bit roomy. Anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, it's time to start building this shoe from the bottom up. Let's start with the sole. The sole is 5 layers, with layer 1 going against your foot and layer 5 touching the ground. I cut out layers 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of corrugated cardboard. I hot glued them all together and made sure to press down to eliminate the gap that's created from layer 3 since it's a shorter piece. When all these corrugated layers were glued together, I trimmed the edges to make them a little bit more even, and once the edges were nice and smooth, I pushed down really hard to bend the sole. This helps make the sneaker look a little bit more natural and less boxy later on, but it also helps the shoe bend and flex when you're going to wear it. With that foundation completely built, I moved on to layer 5, all that detail work. I printed out 2 copies of the details, and I glued one of the printouts directly onto the bottom of the sole. I made sure to add a lot of white glue so it was completely glued down, and I took the second copy, but did not glue that down. I taped it onto cereal box cardboard. I loosely cut around it and then proceeded to cut out all of the white pieces and glue them directly onto the sole. The first printout acts as a template, so I know exactly where to glue down all the pieces, and I'm not gonna lie, this took a long time. There's a little gap between each piece, so if you're following along, do not push the pieces together. You want to keep that gap. And as you can see in the video, I cut on the inside of every black line. I purposely made the black lines thick on the template in order to leave those gaps. Every few minutes, I brushed over the pieces that I had previously glued down with the extra glue that was on my paintbrush. In my mind, all these layers of glue helps prevent the pieces from falling off, and I think it worked because none of the pieces fell off. I kept cutting and gluing, going and going, adding each piece a little at a time, and after a while it started to actually look pretty cool. I saved the logo for last, covered it completely in glue so none of the letters would pop off, and yeah, that's the sole. Time for the sides. I taped together the template and then cut it out of cereal box cardboard. I used a hole punch to punch out all of the holes, and I also cut out the ankle strap and the heel cap out of cereal box cardboard. I wrapped the sides around the sole, glued it down with hot glue, but I didn't glue all the way to the bottom. I left a little bit of that corrugation showing, and this is important, so do not push it all the way down. After the sides were in place, I hot glued the heel cap to the back and then moved on to the laces. These funky looking pieces were cut out of more cereal box cardboard, but these larger pieces, I actually kept them just as paper. I took long pieces of masking tape and completely covered the surface before cutting them out. The tape kind of makes the paper look and feel like canvas, but it also is much more flexible than cardboard, so it would allow the shoe to move a little bit instead of just being a box on your foot. I lined up the holes on the paper with the holes that I punched out of the laces and then glued the 2 pieces together with some white glue. After that glue dried, I was then able to line everything up and glue it to the side of the sneaker, and you're going to notice that I didn't glue down the little curved section of the paper on the side. This is on purpose. I'm going to slip something under there later on. But yeah, I glued the ankle strap down over the laces and then repunched all the holes before moving on to the toes. Coming up with templates that are easy for you guys to follow is actually really challenging for me, so this particular piece took a lot of trial and error. So instead of 1 piece, which I had originally planned, it's actually 3 pieces, which is a little bit easier to manage. I pushed and taped the edges together and then glued each of these pieces one by one onto the front of the shoe. There's a little overlap, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. As for the top of the toes, I cut a piece of cereal box cardboard, put it on top of scrap corrugated cardboard, and then taped the template back on top of it. I then took a pen and pushed down really hard on all of these dots. When the paper is removed, you can see all the puncture marks in the cereal box cardboard. Kind of cool, right? It looks like perforated leather. But yeah, I slid that into the shoe and used some tape to tape it in place as I nudged it around and made sure that it fit, and then slowly added a little glue at a time until it was glued and the toes were complete. FYI, you may need to trim this piece a little bit down, depending on how you glued in the other part of the toes. I took my hole punched and cleaned up a few of the holes that I had neglected before, and then I glued on the end piece for the laces, which is just that small piece. After that, I cut a tongue out of cereal box cardboard and hot glued it to the underside of the toe cover. It was feeling a little rigid, so to make the tongue a little bit more flexible, I snipped down each side of it. These snips help the sides curve inward and just help it bend a little bit more instead of just being a solid, unmovable piece. With all that out of the way, it was finally time to add trim to the outside of the sole and make this start looking like a legitimate shoe. I took strips of cereal box cardboard and wrapped it around the bottom edges of the shoe. Hot glue kept it in place, but I want to make sure that you guys know about the front pieces. These front pieces will need to be trimmed down, so just draw a little line and then cut a slant into it, and it's really not hard to do. The end is definitely in sight, but first, onto the pouches. Air Jordan utility shoes have weird little canvas fanny packs strapped to them. I probably just offended a lot of sneakerheads, but that's what they look like to me. So in order to make them, I made a template for envelopes. I took my template for the side pouches, covered it in tape, and then cut them out. So after they were cut out, I folded along the dotted lines to make little pouches. I also added a cereal box circle to each one to act as a button, and I decided to hot glue these pouches shut, but you could totally use Velcro if you wanted functional pouches instead. As for the larger pouch on the back of the shoe, I covered the template in tape and cut the two pieces out. I then took a thin strip of cereal box cardboard, glued it to the middle of the two pieces so it'll look like this. I folded the sides together until it made a little box, and then I gently folded all these triangle tabs inward, added a loop of hot glue, and pressed it into the back of the shoe. A little bit more hot glue helps secure the smaller pouches to the sides, and then it was time to make the buckles! Yay! The buckles are really simple. I cut these shapes out of cereal box cardboard, slipped the strips into the holes, and then folded the strips in half. I then glued one side under that paper curve, and then the other side near the back pouch, and yeah, that's the buckle. It's super simple, but it adds a lot of detail to the shoe, and looks really cool too. Whoa! It's finally time to paint. I started the paint job with purple craft paint, and I painted the bottom of the shoe, the top of the toes, and the ankle strap in purple. Everything else was coated in black craft paint. All this took multiple coats. I think I did 3 coats of everything, maybe 4. The pouches and the side panels were also painted dark gray. That was the last coat of paint. And I just used black mixed with silver just to give it a little bit more superhero, supervillain pizzazz. I also painted some neon pink accents on the bottom of the sneakers and along the strip on the back pouch. After that, the last thing to do was to add some paper decals to the top of the tongue and bottom of the pouches. And yeah, I think it's time for the glamour shots. So there you have it, Prowler sneakers made completely out of cardboard. That's right, Air Jordan Utility 1 sneakers made out of cereal boxes. They're actually pretty comfortable to wear, I was kind of surprised about that. But they're not exactly durable, guys, these are cardboard shoes. So, buyer beware. I walked around in them for 10 minutes and they held up really well without any pieces falling off, but to be honest, I was being careful. So if you decide to make these and wear them, that is on you. However, even though they work as functional shoes, I'd probably recommend these as just display pieces, but you do you. Anyway, I'd love it if you guys liked the video and subscribe to this channel for more cardboard costumes and props. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye!